In the autumn of 1929, a seemingly ordinary morning on Wall Street unfurled into an unprecedented catastrophe as the world's most prosperous nation plunged into sudden, inexplicable bankruptcy. This wasn't the aftermath of a devastating war, a widespread famine, or an invading army. Instead, it was the chilling consequence of abstract numbers on a screen, digits that, with terrifying speed, ceased to align. What unfolded next transcended a mere market collapse. It ignited a global financial war, an intricate, high-stakes battle waged across continents over the very foundations of gold, spiraling debt, and the desperate struggle for survival. This seismic struggle fundamentally rewired the entire modern world, forging new geopolitical landscapes and economic doctrines. It's a foundational story of our modern economic reality, yet one conspicuously absent from the standard history books taught in schools.
Because the Great Depression was far more profound than a simple market downturn or an unfortunate economic cycle. It was an existential struggle for ultimate control over money itself.
This was a conflict devoid of conventional weapons and uniformed soldiers, fought instead with the silent, potent instruments of fluctuating interest rates, competing currencies, and the relentless hum of printing presses.
And like all wars throughout history, this one yielded its clear victors and its vanquished, not through random chance or unforeseen circumstances, but through deliberate, calculated design. Act 1. The Crack. As the exuberant roar of the Roaring Twenties began to fade in late 1929, subtle, ominous fractures were already beginning to appear in the bedrock of the global economy. Across the industrial heartlands, the once relentless hum of production began to slow, factory output dwindling. In the vast agricultural fields, farm prices plummeted, devastating rural communities. Even across the Atlantic, the nations of Europe, still recovering from the Great War, showed undeniable signs of severe financial strain, yet optimism blinded nearly everyone. The prevailing belief was absolute. The market always had to rise. It always did. The bull market, it seemed, was an unstoppable force, an eternal engine of wealth, an illusion of endless prosperity.
Then, like a sudden violent storm, came Black Thursday, October 24, 1929. The initial sell orders trickled in, seemingly innocuous at first, mere whispers in the bustling trading halls. But within mere hours, those whispers escalated into a deafening roar as an uncontrollable torrent of selling engulfed Wall Street. Panic seized the traders, their faces etched with disbelief as fortunes evaporated in the blink of an eye.
By Tuesday, October 29th, the infamous Black Tuesday, the devastation was complete. Billions in hard-earned wealth had simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind a trail of utter despair and ruin. Outside the majestic edifice of the New York Stock Exchange, men stood shoulder to shoulder, their expressions vacant, silent and staring, utterly unable to comprehend the magnitude of the catastrophe that had just unfolded.
Crucially, the Wall Street crash itself was not the ultimate cause of the impending Great Depression. It was merely the devastating spark that ignited a much larger, more destructive conflagration.
The inferno that relentlessly followed was fueled not by market forces alone, but by a series of ill-fated policy decisions implemented under the guise of stability. These choices, tragically, ended up obliterating trust across the world.
Before this monumental collapse, there was the grand illusion, a dazzling, shimmering mirage of endless prosperity that had so convincingly lulled an entire generation into believing they were utterly untouchable, immune to any downturn, invincible.
Welcome to Act 2, where we delve into the dazzling yet deceptive illusion of prosperity that gripped a nation. The 1920s roared with an unprecedented energy, the vibrant syncopation of jazz echoing through smoky clubs, the gleaming chrome of new automobiles cruising bustling city streets, and the audacious ascent of skyscrapers piercing the boundless blue.
It was a decade brimming with unstoppable optimism, a fervent belief that the good times would never end. America, having emerged triumphant and largely unscathed from the brutal crucible of the First World War, stood confident and ready to lead. Across the Atlantic, however, a ravaged Europe lay broken, its once vast gold reserves drained dry, its economies burdened by an insurmountable web of debts. The United States quickly stepped into the void, becoming the world's indispensable banker, its most prolific factory, and a beacon of desperate hope for a weary world. New York's iconic Wall Street solidified its dominance, transforming into the undisputed financial capital of the entire planet, a vibrant hub of boundless ambition.
Newspapers of the era enthusiastically christened it the Roaring Twenties. But beneath the intoxicating rhythm of jazz and the effervescent sparkle of champagne flutes, a perilous illusion was rapidly taking shape. Credit flowed cheaply, almost recklessly, igniting a wildfire of speculation that swept through every corner of society. The Federal Reserve, a nascent institution barely a decade old, was not only observing, but actively fueling this dizzying ascent.
Banks enthusiastically encouraged ordinary citizens to buy stocks on margin, a seductive proposition where for every dollar you genuinely owned, you could borrow an astounding 9 more. Clerks, humble farmers, and tireless factory workers, all captivated by the allure of easy wealth, genuinely believed they could become overnight millionaires from the burgeoning stock market. The Dow Jones Industrial Average soared to dizzying, unprecedented heights, a testament to what newspapers confidently hailed as progress. Yet this was a dangerous miscalculation. True prosperity is not built on a foundation of borrowed money and unchecked exuberance. This was not genuine prosperity at all. It was, in its stark reality, dangerous leverage. And the chilling, immutable law of finance dictates that leverage, eventually, always snaps, with devastating consequences.
As the shattered remnants of the Roaring Twenties lay strewn across the financial landscape, Act 3 of this unfolding drama, the Money War, violently commenced.
In the immediate aftermath of the devastating Wall Street crash, the mighty Federal Reserve confronted a monumental and agonizing dilemma. Should it bravely inject desperately needed liquidity into the hemorrhaging American economy, flooding the system with vital funds to staunch the bleeding? Or, conversely, should it adhere to the rigid orthodoxy of the era, tightening credit lines to fiercely protect the perceived sanctity and stability of the cherished American dollar?
With a profound sense of foreboding, the Federal Reserve ultimately opted for a path of severe discipline, a choice rooted in the deeply entrenched belief in the inviolable gold standard. In a global economy still inextricably bound to this golden tether, every single dollar circulating proudly within the United States had to be meticulously and unequivocally backed by a tangible equivalent in Fort Knox gold reserves.
The central bankers, gripped by a palpable fear, worried that an unrestrained deluge of printed money would inevitably erode international confidence, leading foreign nations to demand their gold redemption in a catastrophic run on the nation's precious metal reserves.
Thus, defying the conventional wisdom of easing during a crisis, the Federal Reserve tragically raised interest rates, further constricting the lifeblood of commerce. The consequences were swift and devastating.
Liquidity, once a flowing river, abruptly evaporated, leaving the financial system parched. Banks, the pillars of community trust, began to collapse with horrifying regularity.
Between the calamitous years of 1930 and 1933, an astonishing, heart-wrenching number, nearly 10,000 American banks, utterly failed. Ordinary citizens, their faces etched with despair and desperation, formed endless, winding queues outside these crumbling institutions, yearning to reclaim their life savings, only to find the cold, hard vaults tragically empty. This was no longer merely a market crash. It had metastasized into a full-blown, catastrophic monetary collapse. its destructive tendrils reaching out and ensnaring nations across the entire globe. A global contagion of financial ruin.
This was no longer just a localized market crash. It was a devastating monetary collapse, spreading its tendrils of despair across the globe. We enter Act 4, the gold trap.
The gold standard, once the revered bedrock and pride of an interconnected civilization, meticulously designed to ensure stability, had grotesquely transformed into an economic noose tightening around the necks of nations.
Under the rigid dictates of gold, national currencies were inextricably fixed. When gold reserves inevitably flowed out of a country, the brutal, unavoidable response was to drastically raise interest rates, slash public spending, and savagely reduce wages, all in a desperate attempt to lure that precious metal back.
This suffocating process, known as deflation, became nothing less than a deliberate act of economic suicide, slowly strangling the life out of economies.
In Britain, the proud industrial heartland, unemployment rates horrifically soared, climbing beyond 20%, casting millions into destitution. Across Germany, the widespread misery and desperate hardship became fertile ground, nourishing the seeds of dangerous political extremism. And in America, once booming factories fell silent, their smokestacks cold, production halted, while vast hordes of useless gold lay locked away, glittering in the impenetrable vaults of Fort Knox. The gold standard, originally conceived to meticulously create global economic order and predictable stability, had instead perversely synchronized chaos, binding every sovereign nation, every citizen, every family to the same inexorably sinking ship of global depression. As the global economic crisis deepened, a synchronized chaos enveloped the world, chaining every nation to the same sinking ship. In this desperate struggle, Britain, once the mighty empire, was the first to yield.
By the summer of 1931, the economic pressure became unbearable. Fearful investors, sensing the impending collapse, began a frantic drain of physical gold from the vaults of the Bank of England, a desperate exodus that mirrored the nation's dwindling confidence. The venerable British pound, a pillar of stability for generations, teetered on the brink, its value collapsing rapidly. In a desperate attempt to staunch the bleeding, the British government enacted harsh austerity measures. Wages were slashed, public spending was brutally cut. But these efforts proved futile against the overwhelming tide of economic despair.
Finally, on a grim September day in 1931, with no other recourse, Britain made the monumental decision. It abandoned the gold standard. The immediate aftermath was catastrophic. Overnight, the value of the pound plummeted by a staggering 30%. A wave of shock reverberated across the financial capitals of the world. For more than a century, the British pound had been a global benchmark, its stability equated to the immutable value of gold itself. Now, in an instant, that bedrock certainty was shattered. Yet, amidst the initial turmoil and dire predictions, an unexpected turn of events unfolded. Within mere months of severing its ties to gold, Britain began a remarkable, albeit tentative, recovery. Freed from the rigid constraints of the gold standard, its exports, now cheaper, started to rise. Credit, once frozen, began to flow again, and the gears of industrial production slowly but steadily ticked upward. The profound lesson was undeniable, laid bare for all to see. A nation could, in fact, unchain itself from gold and find its footing. But in the grip of dogma and fear, very few national leaders, still clinging to old beliefs, dared to acknowledge or learn from Britain's audacious experiment.
As the world grappled with uncertainty, America, across the vast Atlantic, steadfastly clung to the gold standard with an almost religious fervor.
President Herbert Hoover, a man of unwavering conviction, passionately declared that maintaining sound money was not merely an economic policy, but a profound moral duty. Yet this rigid adherence led to a catastrophic unraveling.
A chilling wave of deflation swept through the nation, systematically stripping value from everything. Prices plummeted by a devastating third, leaving producers in despair.
Farmers, unable to even cover shipping costs, heartbreakingly poured their precious milk into ditches. This economic paralysis triggered widespread unemployment, pushing millions into destitution. Stark breadlines, symbols of collective hunger and desperation, stretched endlessly through the heart of every American city.
Paradoxically, as the dollar maintained its artificial strength, its own citizens were left to starve.
In 1933, a nation teetered on the brink. Amidst the despair and widespread unemployment, a new leader, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, stepped into the void of the presidency.
His initial, most audacious move, however, was not a grand jobs program, but a direct, unprecedented assault on the very foundation of the nation's financial system. He declared a nationwide bank holiday, a chilling decree that slammed shut every bank door across America, freezing all transactions and plunging the entire economy into an unsettling, silent stasis.
Then, with a stroke of a pen, came Executive Order 6102. This was not merely a directive, it was a decree of confiscation, stripping American citizens of their private gold.
From vast family hoards to a few cherished gold coins, ordinary people were now compelled by law to surrender their precious metal to the government. They were offered a seemingly fair price of $20.67 per ounce, a sum many accepted with heavy hearts, their trust in the sanctity of private property shaken to its core.
But the true purpose of this drastic measure soon became shockingly clear. Just months later, the government dramatically revalued its newly acquired gold reserves, arbitrarily increasing the price to $35 an ounce.
Overnight, the very dollar in Americans' pockets was devalued by a staggering 40%.
This cunning maneuver represented the single largest peacetime wealth transfer in United States history, a colossal sum quietly siphoned from the hands of its bewildered citizens directly into the coffers of the state, all framed as a necessary step towards economic recovery.
In essence, the insidious, hidden tax of inflation had covertly returned, silently eroding the value of their labor and their savings.
Act 8. Global Competitive Devaluation and Fractured Trade. With America's audacious move to devalue its dollar, a dangerous precedent was set, unleashing a cascade of retaliatory actions across the globe.
The 1930s rapidly descended into a global currency war, a desperate race where nations, reeling from economic hardship, frantically competed to cheapen their own money in a desperate bid for survival.
The mighty dollar, once a pillar of stability, faltered. Then, in quick succession, the franc, the lira, and the yen plummeted, each nation striving to gain a fleeting advantage.
In this new economic battlefield, tariffs soared, becoming insurmountable barriers, and international trade, the lifeblood of global prosperity, shriveled and collapsed entirely.
What economists would later benignly term competitive devaluation was in stark reality nothing short of brutal economic warfare. Each country, isolated and desperate, ruthlessly attempted to export its domestic pain and unemployment abroad, pushing its neighbors deeper into the abyss. The bitter harvest of this struggle was a fractured world, shattered into rival currency zones: the sterling bloc, the dollar zone, the yen sphere, and the dwindling adherence to gold, each fiercely defending its own rapidly shrinking territory. The grand experiment of globalization was not merely stalled, it was violently reversed, pulling the world back into insular economic silos. Yet the devastation wrought by these currency wars wasn't confined to balance sheets and trade figures. It seeped into the very fabric of society, sowing discord and instability. The damage wasn't just financial, it was profoundly political. The repercussions of the financial cataclysm extended far beyond mere balance sheets, piercing deep into the political landscape. This was Act 9, the political fallout.
A world unraveling under economic collapse invariably provides fertile ground for the seeds of extremism to take root and flourish.
In Germany, a staggering 6 million souls found themselves without work, their futures extinguished. The once stable middle class, already scarred and ruined by the ravages of hyperinflation just a decade prior, now faced utter annihilation by the brutal force of deflation. Desperate and disillusioned, they collectively turned their gaze towards a charismatic figure who offered not just a glimmer of hope, but a searing promise of revenge against perceived enemies and a glorious national revival: Adolf Hitler.
Across the globe, the instability echoed. While Japan saw militarists ascend to dominance, proclaiming that aggressive conquest was the sole path to national survival, Italy, under the stern gaze of Mussolini, aggressively glorified an unprecedented level of state control, centralizing all aspects of society.
Even in America, the bastion of individual liberty, Franklin Delano Roosevelt dramatically expanded federal power, asserting governmental authority in ways no president before him had dared.
And within the vast reaches of the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin masterfully exploited the pervasive global chaos, leveraging the widespread fear and uncertainty to tighten his already formidable iron grip over the populace.
Though their ideologies diverged wildly, from fascism to communism to regulated capitalism, they all sprang from a single catastrophic root cause: the profound and systemic failure of the monetary system. The Great Depression was not merely an economic implosion, it was a violent, global reshuffling of power, setting the stage for Act 10, the recovery and the new order. By the late 1930s, a fragile recovery began to emerge across the ravaged landscape, a semblance of hope shimmering amidst the lingering dust of economic despair. Yet this revival was far from organic. It was the deliberate hand of governments seizing control, asserting their will over the chaotic forces of the market. In America, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's ambitious New Deal programs initiated a massive national effort, weaving new infrastructure across the nation, creating jobs, and igniting a crucial flicker of optimism in the hearts of millions. But with this newfound stability came a profound shift: the institutionalization of state control, firmly embedding government influence into the very fabric of the economy. As the decade drew to a close, the focus subtly shifted from economic recovery to the grim preparations for an impending global conflict. By 1939, rearmament became the dominant force, overshadowing all other efforts. When the Second World War finally concluded, the global monetary map was utterly transformed, rendered almost unrecognizable.
The precious reserves of gold were now concentrated, secured deep within the formidable vaults of Fort Knox, a fortress of American wealth. The American dollar, robust and unchallenged, ascended to reign supreme, becoming the undisputed world's reserve currency.
In the pivotal year of 1944, delegates from nations across the globe converged in the tranquil setting of Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. Their monumental task was to forge a new international monetary system, a framework designed to bring order to the post-war financial chaos. The consensus forged there established a new global paradigm. Most international currencies would be meticulously pegged to the mighty dollar, and the dollar itself would in turn be steadfastly pegged to gold.
America, with its vast gold reserves and burgeoning industrial might, thus cemented its position as the world's preeminent banker, dictating the rhythm of global finance. The harrowing years of the Great Depression had not only dismantled the old empire built on British gold, but had triumphantly crowned a formidable new era, the reign of American credit, shaping the destiny of nations for decades to come.
Most people vividly recall the Great Depression solely as an overwhelming economic tragedy, a period of widespread destitution and despair.
And indeed, it was that and more. Yet beneath the surface of financial ruin lay a far more profound truth. It was a monumental transfer of power.
The revered gold standard,
a bedrock of global finance for centuries, didn't simply wither away due to economic inefficiency. Its demise was engineered, for it fundamentally restricted the burgeoning aspirations of political power.
Adhering to the gold standard demanded harsh austerity, often igniting civil unrest and desperate riots among the populace. Conversely, abandoning it unleashed the potent forces of inflation, granting governments unprecedented control over their national economies and the lives of their citizens.
In this grand game, the common people, the everyday citizens, found themselves invariably losing, caught between two unforgiving choices.
Every purported rescue, every grand bailout, every declaration of stability, meticulously orchestrated to alleviate the crisis, served an insidious underlying purpose: to push power ever upward. It shifted decisively from the hands of individual savers to the vast machinery of states, from the chaotic yet free markets to the centralized dominion of faceless bureaucrats.
The Great Depression, therefore, wasn't a mere collapse of a system. It was a calculated takeover, a deliberate transition from the tangible security of gold to the manipulable abstraction of paper money, from the principles of economic freedom to the tight grip of central management.
And for those who might view this as a relic of a distant past, a dusty chapter in history books, I urge you to look closer. The modern echo is unmistakable. In the year 2008, the world once again confronted a seismic financial crisis. Banks.
If this narrative of financial turmoil and societal upheaval feels like a distant historical echo, I urge you to look closer, to examine our recent past.
Barely 2 decades ago, in the year 2008, the global economy found itself teetering on the precipice once more. A profound financial crisis gripped the world, sending shockwaves through every sector. Banks, once pillars of stability, crumbled with alarming speed, and the lifeblood of commerce, credit, instantly froze, bringing industries to a grinding halt.
Yet the policy response diverged sharply from the austerity of the 1930s. This time, central banks unleashed an unprecedented deluge, printing not millions but trillions of dollars, actively choosing inflation over the bitter pill of deflation.
Instead of allowing ailing institutions to collapse as a natural market correction, they decisively intervened, propping up the entire ailing system. Contrast this with the profound trepidation governments held in the 1930s regarding the very notion of printing money. To the gruesome tale of Cyrus the Great, whose severed head, it is believed, was drowned in blood by a vengeful queen. And then we delve into the chilling tactics of a ruthless Chinese general, infamous for burying 400,000 prisoners alive. These are but glimpses into the extraordinary sagas of the 12 legendary warriors and formidable military units that shaped the destiny of Asia.
Because the US dollar's true and most formidable weapon isn't its physical paper form, nor the digital entries that represent it. No, its ultimate power rests solely on collective belief, the shared conviction of billions that it holds immutable value.
And as long as the world collectively believes, the United States, through its currency, maintains its unparalleled global dominion. But history, with its relentless march, has an undeniable and often brutal habit of humbling every single empire that dares to confuse its deeply held beliefs with immutable, objective truth.
The echoes of past empires, from Rome to Great Britain, serve as stark warnings. If this exploration has offered you a new, perhaps unsettling, perspective on the true nature of global power, we invite you to subscribe and delve deeper.
History does not conceal its profound answers in the uncharted waters of the future. Rather, they are already meticulously written, embedded within the very fabric of our past, waiting to be rediscovered and understood.
Every time you hear the seemingly benign terms, interest rates, quantitative easing, or the rallying cry of defending the currency, remember, these are not mere technicalities. They are, in fact, sophisticated battle plans, covert strategies deployed in the ongoing war over money and power.
In the grim reality of the 1930s, defending the currency inflicted starvation through the brutal grip of deflation, choking the life out of ordinary citizens.
Today, the seemingly benevolent act of stimulating the economy often means a gradual, insidious erosion of savings and living standards through the relentless tide of inflation.
While the tactics may differ, the devastating impact remains chillingly consistent. Governments, with their vast apparatus, invariably survive. Powerful banks adapt, their vaults growing ever larger. The entrenched elites simply adjust their portfolios and emerge wealthier. But the ordinary people, the backbone of society, always pay the price, shouldering the burden of these financial maneuvers. This brings us to a crucial, chilling warning. History does not simply repeat its exact steps. No, instead, it reverberates, echoing familiar tunes through different eras. We witness this phenomenon most acutely when the crushing weight of debt reaches unsustainable heights, when the feverish pursuit of speculation grips markets, and when those institutions meant to stabilize, the Federal Reserve and other banks, paradoxically ignite the very fires they later struggle to extinguish. This insidious pattern, once set in motion, inevitably returns. Consider the echoes of the 1970s, the seismic shock of 2008, and the unprecedented interventions of 2020. Different decades, distinct circumstances, yet the underlying rhythm, the core mechanics of crisis, remain eerily consistent. With each cycle, the fundamental nature of money itself is distorted, transforming into a formidable weapon wielded by unseen hands. And with each blow, the bedrock of societal trust is systematically eroded, shattering faith in the system.
The Great Depression, far from being a singular historical anomaly, stands revealed as a chilling manual, a blueprint for financial warfare. Disturbingly, we continue to follow its grim instructions. Therefore, when the headlines scream of a market crash, resist the urge to merely perceive abstract numbers and plummeting graphs. Instead, envision a far deeper, more insidious conflict.
This is a war waged silently within the impenetrable vaults of the Federal Reserve, within the imposing government debt offices, and through the hushed, influential corridors where the very fabric of money is controversially remade.
Because the true battles of our modern age are no longer confined to the flash of bullets or the roar of artillery. They are sophisticated engagements fought with the subtle yet devastating power of shifting interest rates, the manipulation of global currencies, and the ceaseless hum of the printing presses churning out new fiat money. The Great Depression truly marked the genesis of the first global financial war, a protracted struggle for economic dominance. Every subsequent crisis we have endured, from the oil shocks to the housing bubbles, has been but another strategic campaign in this unrelenting conflict. It is a relentless war waged over the fundamental pillars of trust, over the ultimate control of global finance, and ultimately over the intrinsic value of everything you possess, everything you have worked for.
If this deep dive has offered you a fresh perspective on the hidden forces shaping our world, please consider subscribing. The critical answers we seek are not concealed in some distant, unknowable future. They are embedded, often overlooked, within the cycles and echoes of our financial past.